hello and welcome. This is, Star Wars Original Trilogy, Lecture 1. We are getting started. I am Nick Lugo, and, I'm going to take you through Star Wars today. I'm going to introduce you to Luke Skywalker. And, if you ask, first of all, I hope that you're coming from the prequels lectures that I did on movies 1 through 3. But if you're here just because you like the original trilogy and you want to get started there, it's like, good for you. Good for you. There's a lot of wisdom in these movies, and, that's going to be my job. My job in this lecture series is going to be, essentially, to translate why we love Star Wars so much into a language that we can understand. That's the idea. You see something like Star Wars, and it's nostalgic, it's amazing, it's awe-inspiring, and, it inspires you. But the question is why, right? The question is why, and partially, we don't know why. Partially, we don't really know why something like a movie, something like a fictional character like Luke Skywalker can, make you a better person, right? We ask this question all the time. It's like, okay, you look at someone like Harry Potter. Millions of children read Harry Potter every single day, and, they start to act like Harry Potter. They start to become Harry Potter. And you ask the question, you're like, is Harry Potter real then, right? Like, even though he's a fictional character, is he does he have a real impact on the world? Does he have a real impact on you? And the answer is a clear yes. The answer is a clear yes. These heroes that we create, these fictional characters, they inspire us. And, that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. They inspire me, and hopefully they inspire you. And hopefully this entire lecture is going to be, how to use Star Wars to make you a better person. How about that? It's a great compromise between entertainment and an actual, progress, meaning. And, that's a beautiful thing. So, let's get started, right? Let's get started. The first idea is very simple. I'm just going to sort of run you through these ideas. You are Luke, and Luke is you, right? And, you imagine that when you look at something like a hero, you place yourself in the shoes of a hero. You don't just passively watch the story. It's essentially psychologically proven that, you take yourself and you put yourself in Luke's shoes, and you sort of walk in his shoes for around 2.5 hours while you watch the movie. And that's what we do naturally. This lecture is just essentially going to be, showing you how you walked with him for 2.5 hours. And the same idea goes with this. Luke can be you, right? He's the archetypal hero. He's the person who, was able to do many different things and was able to, be a hero and improve himself and become a better person. And, you could do that too. And then another very simple idea is that this is your galaxy. So we're going to look at this from a little bit of a deeper perspective, and we're not just going to look at, Luke and we'll say, characters around him and the system that surrounds him. We're going to say this is something like, his psyche, the things that are going on inside of him. And, I'm going to give you an example of that right now. So let's get started with the actual movie. I'm going to be titling this lecture, or hopefully I am. Let's just call this lecture Seeing Above the Horizon, right? It's called A New Hope, and obviously that's pretty catchy. But I like the idea of seeing above the horizon because it really gets to this idea that we'll talk about later of Luke staring into the sunset and finally being able to see above the, we'll say, farming nature in which he has been placed in, right? The farming nature in which you only have to look at the ground. So let's get started with, it doesn't even start with Luke, right? We have this hero image, but he doesn't even get introduced until about 20 minutes in. It's like, what starts the movie? And, we started with culture. We started with the villain. We started with the evil tyrannical culture that is purveying Luke, and at the same time, we're starting it where we left off. We're starting it exactly, a few years later, but in the same place that we were at the end of movie 3. So, the first character we really meet, besides like R2-D2 and C-3PO, is, yes, this culture, this tyrannical culture. We'll call him the devouring force, the well, the person who wants to rule the world, right? And he wants to rule the galaxy. And when we say he wants to rule the galaxy, which he does, right? They get rid of the old republic, right? They get rid of the Imperial Senate, and what they're doing there is essentially saying, well, now the Emperor has full control, the Emperor and Darth Vader ruling together, and they also got rid of this planet of Alderaan, which is the last remnants of the Republic. The only ever senator that is left from the old Republic has been swept away, and right now what we're left with is something like a domineering culture, a culture that is, well, hell-bent to take away your individuality, hell-bent on not letting you become a person. And we could say that's the world in which Luke has been given it. And well, one of the ideas that we'll be exploring here is that Luke can be you, right? And that you can be Luke, and that there's some reason why Luke is incredibly relatable here. And I'm going to be spending this lecture trying to see exactly what that is. The first example that it really has an impact on me. This is the thing that really kills me. If you look at something like a domineering culture, something trying to restrict your individuality, the first thing that pops up in my mind is school, right? Our schooling system, we'll say, round-the-clock, organized, orderly school system that is designed to, well, create workers. You look at you look at your school experience and you say, well, I've been spending the first 18 years of my life, and probably 22 because most people go to college nowadays. It's like I've been spending the first 22 years of my life, and maybe I haven't even thought for myself. Maybe I just go from class to class and they teach me what to think. They teach me, well, English and calculus and history, and they teach me all these things, but at the same time, there's never a class on, well, what do I want to do with my life, and who do I want to be, and who are you, and, well, self-discovery. It's always let's tell you things. And I had this guy on my podcast, his name is Kirk Westwood, and he spent, well, an entire podcast speaking about how school has been for at least the last 100 years something like a employee factory, right? Because that's exactly what, in the 1920s, we established this education system, which is based on the Prussian model, which is essentially, we have a strong need for people to work in that case, factories, right? Like making clothes and making materials and we'll say the hands-on things that require no thinking. And we haven't changed our system since. And you could see the remnants of it. You could see how it actually plays out. You operate under a bell. You're always under authority. You never really get to, well, act for yourself. And there's always something like a assessment of your skills, right? Something like a progress report because, well, a test because part of it is because they want to assess your progress and see how well you're fitting into the system, and part of it is because you really don't want to be there, and if there wasn't a test, then you wouldn't study in the first place. It's a cynical view on school, but it's just about as valid as the pro arguments, which is something like it gives you order, it gives you structure, which is something that a child needs. So we'll start with that for now. So this is exactly what Darth Vader is. And Darth Vader is the character of control. He's the character of tyrannical order, right? Too much order, too much structure, so much that you lose your individual self. And, well, that's exactly what he's trying to do. Right here, he's talking to one of his, we'll call them slaves, because that's pretty much what they are. And he says, now she, in talking about Leia, is my only link to finding their secret base. He's trying to figure out the secret base of the rebels and destroy the separatists, the rebels, the individuals, once and for all. And this is the culture in which Luke has been, we'll say, born into. And maybe you could say this is the culture in which we have been born into. Now we have culture number two. Culture number two is, well, Luke's, I'm not going to call him father, but he's essentially a father. He's his step-uncle. And his step-uncle is the same thing, right? Like, you could think of him as a father figure, because this is really, it's more relatable. You think about this is how maybe potentially you were raised by your parents, right? Because that's another strong influence on you from your 0 to the time that you're 25. But really more like something around like 18. And well, what he says is something very simple. First of all, he talks about Obi-Wan. He says the wizard is just a crazy old man. He just calls him a wizard. And then he also, do I have it here? Yes, right? Luke is right here. And he says, you must understand, I need you here, Luke. I need you here on the farm. I need you here to work for me and, well, do the mindless thing that I have told you to do. And and while Luke wants to go to the academy, you could tell Luke is a little bit resentful, or at least he's a little bit well, angry. His individuality is being completely destroyed, and his ambition. So the question is, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? We have this problem in, you could say, our society, or you could have the general problem in which we must develop something like an individual self. We must develop something like a personality, an identity, a sense of individual responsibility, which we'll get into later. And we're ambitious, right? As children, we're the heroes. We're the potential heroes. And in this case, he's the only hope, right? He's the only hope, or he's one of the 2 hopes that exist in this entire universe. And, well, it's like all he's focused on right now, or the only thing that he's allowed to see is the ground. The only thing he's allowed to see is, well, what his father tells him to see. So, and you could tell that he's sort of, we'll say, influenced by his step-uncle. His step-uncle says he's just a crazy old hermit, speaking about Obi-Wan. But then you have someone like Luke who says he's kind of a strange old hermit, right? He doesn't really look at Ben as someone who's, well, potentially divine, or potentially meaningful, or potentially could do the things in which he does. So here's what happens. I think this is really funny. So you have, well, actually, no, I'm not going to say this is funny because this is really sad. So you have Luke, who's being influenced by his step-uncle, by his father, and who's being held back. He's being held back. And you ask the question, why is Luke being held back? And the answer is given to you here. Luke's, we'll say mother, says, Luke's just not a farmer, Owen. He has too much of his father in him. And Owen says, that's what I'm afraid of. And that killed me. When I heard that, that absolutely killed me, because it's a pathological way of viewing the world, but it's a way that in which we view the world all the time. So I'll explain it to you very simply. Luke and you are full of potential, right? Always. You could be a good guy or you could be a bad guy. You could spend the next 2 hours watching this lecture and growing yourself or reading a book or doing whatever, or you could spend the next 2 hours, I don't know, scrolling on Instagram. It's like, you could do both, right? You could do both. And you could say that for the next 2 hours, you have potential to be good and potential to be bad. And you imagine in your entire life, you have the same thing. Because you think about it and, well, are there people who have wasted their lives? It's like, yes. Are there people who have been heroes and acted out the hero archetype and have, well, done amazing things? It's like, yes. It's like, you have the potential to be both of those people. And Owen sees that, right? Owen sees that. And in that way, he's right. So he's saying, Luke has the potential to be Darth Vader. It's like, yes, that is true. That is exactly true. You have the potential to be the worst evil that evil has ever existed. Or you could just waste your life. But the solution that he comes to is the part that's concerning. The part that's concerning is, well, You could think of Luke, you could think of you could think of anybody as the ultimate maybe, right? The ultimate maybe. It's like, maybe I'll be a hero. Maybe I'll do the good things. Maybe I'll be a good person. Maybe I'll open the door for a stranger. Maybe I will spend my day doing something that makes other people's lives better. Maybe I'll develop a good relationship. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll waste today. Maybe today is just not my day, and maybe I'm going to take one little step towards the dark side. It's a tough idea. It's a tough idea because, well, when you're given this idea of the fact that you are the ultimate maybe, the problem is when you come to the solution that, well, if I have this potential to be evil, if I have this potential for corruption within me, which, well, we always have, then I just won't do anything then. That's what Owen's saying. He's saying, well, he has the potential to be good, but he also has the potential to be evil. And because he has the potential to be evil, he's just not going to be able to do anything. And, well, it's a risk, right? It's a risk, but what you're really doing is you're restricting your potential. You're restricting your life itself. And, well, that's a real problem. And that's exactly what Darth Vader wants to do. That's why they're so similar characters. They're trying to restrict his individuality, his freedom, because, well, they don't want too much changing. They don't want the structure to shift too much because, well, you could make a very good case that making a change is something that's really, really scary. So that's why I say something like a school system, because the school system is supposed to, well, take an input, which is you, right, which is your, well, creative, open-minded self, which is a positive representation. You still have flaws, but, you're an individual when you're a kid. You say what you think and you say what you feel and turn you into, well, an output, right, an output, which is something like, he who is good for society, right? Because that's exactly what school wants you to be, someone who's good for society. But the question is that someone who's good for you? Because in general, someone that's good for society is somebody who follows orders, somebody who doesn't speak up, somebody who, well, conforms. And another representation of this, which is really simple, it's, well, the need for children and the need for, well, people to fit in. Right? To fit in. What do we mean by fit in? Well, it's a very simple idea. It's like, I'm going to restrict some of my individual self to make friends, right? I'm going to restrict myself for friends. And, well, obviously we need to do this to some degree, right? Of course you need to, well, adapt to your social environment. Of course you need to, well, at least be a little bit likable. It's like, if you're just kind of a rogue actor and you don't care if people like you, then probably you're going to do things that people don't like, and then people aren't going to like you. But at the same time, you look at the other end of the spectrum and it's like, well, what if you just become a mold of your friends? What if you just become exactly what your friends want you to be? This is something that I struggled with for a long time in middle school. We were in a group, and we'll say I was on the outskirts of the group, you could say. I wasn't one of the main actors in the group, and to fit in, all I did was I emulated the leader of the group. I emulated the, well, person that I wanted to be. And, well, that was a problem. That was a problem because I realized about a year or two in, no, probably even longer, that, well, that's not me, that's him, right? And I'm becoming him. It's like, why would I want to do that? And, well, that's the need to fit in. And that's also the loss of individuality. So I wanted to give a few, well, levels of abstraction to really explain this idea of this fear that we have for, well, don't be anything then, right? If I have the potential to be good, then, and I also have the potential to be bad, if I'm also taking a risk, you could say, well, then maybe I just shouldn't do anything. Here's a few examples. First, it starts with your thoughts. We'll say something like an anxiety thought, right? We'll say you have an angry thought for the first time, right? And maybe it's a little vengeful, maybe it's a little problematic, so you decide to avoid it. And what you're really saying there is something very simple. You're saying, if I confront that thought, then it might blow me out of the water, right? Then it might reveal some of the inner vengeance in which I'm struggling with, so I'm just not going to do it, right? That's what anxiety is. Anxiety is, I have a bunch of thoughts, I have a bunch of doubts, I have a bunch of problems in the world, and I don't want to handle them because underneath them is something that I really don't want to see, right? There's a reason why I'm avoiding them, and let me just push it away. There's risk there, right? It is potential good. I could confront it and become a stronger person. It is potential bad, and it could, well, change my perception of the world, so we just don't confront it. Take it to another level, something like action, right? If you want to introduce yourself to strangers or talk to girls, right? It's like, okay, there's potential good there. You can make a new relationship. Or you could do essentially what most people do and just not do it. And what you're really doing is saying, the risk there is too great. The downside is too great, so I'm just not going to do it anyways. Take it another level. You have personality, right? So it starts with your thoughts, then maybe it penetrates to the level of your actions, then it penetrates to the level of your personality. You say, well, I had an angry thought, and wow, being angry is really a problem. I had this problem for a very long time. I really like the idea of love thine enemies in the Bible, and I also love the idea of Jesus, like the archetypal good person, sort of like a, do unto others as you wish they would do to you. So even if somebody, takes your eye out, you don't take their eye out, right? It's not an eye for an eye. If they cut off your ear, then you put it back on them. And I had this idea for a very long time, and it led me to be, too agreeable. It led me to sort of, not become aggressive and not stand up for myself as a result. And, I looked at that and I said, being aggressive and being assertive is a better word. I said, there's a big risk in that, right? I could lose, God, there's so many problems with being assertive, right? Like, let's agree on that. And then, at the same time, but there's a strong amount of good in there, and I just avoided it. And then the final abstraction is very simple. It's like, okay, take that to a higher level. Humans are evil. Humans have the potential to do the worst atrocities in history. Maybe we shouldn't exist then, right? If you're following Uncle Owen's logic to its final conclusion, then really you're making the argument, maybe we shouldn't exist then. I have a friend who says he wants to restrict the number of kids that he's having because he worries about the amount of climate problems that we cause. And what I told him was something very simple. I go, you look at your kid as a problem. You look at him as the person who is going to cause more damage to the environment, right? And I said, what if he's the person that is going to cause the solutions to the environment, right? Because, the answer is both. He could be both. And I don't know why you look at it. I know why you look at it with such a negative viewpoint, but at the same time, it's like, if you're not going to put your faith in humanity, if you're not going to put your faith in, the fact that we have the potential to be good, then, take that argument to its end, and you have a real problem. So you look at something like the culture, and this is something that, it's a very archetypal idea. It's something that people really struggle with often. In Harry Potter, he had his Uncle Vernon. It's the same idea. His uncle, he lives in his house. He's the adopted kid. And, they hate magic. Harry Potter wants to do all of his magic. He wants to be a wizard. And that is the one thing that they despise, wizardry. So they're saying, wizardry or pursuing your potential means that it could be good, but it could be bad, and I just don't want you to do about the bad. I don't want you to cause too many problems. Same idea with Moana, with her father, and same idea with the Buddha, the deep religious Buddha story. It's that exact idea. So I wanted to transition here, and there's a Taoist story that I really, really liked. So I'll tell you the story, and I think it's very relatable. So there's a Taoist story of an old farmer who had worked on his crops for many years. One day his horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. "Such bad luck," they said sympathetically. "Maybe," the farmer replied. The next morning the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. "How wonderful," the neighbors exclaimed. "Maybe," replied the old man. The following day, his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses, was thrown, and broke his leg. The neighbors again came to offer their sympathy on his misfortune. "Maybe," answered the farmer. The day after, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army. Seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. The neighbors congratulated the farmer on how well things had turned out. "Maybe," said the farmer. And that's the end of the story, and it's a beautiful idea. The idea there is, well, it's very simple. It's like, maybe you should do things then. It's like you have no idea what's going to happen when you go out into the world. You have no idea the amount of good in which you can do. And maybe it's bad. Maybe it is. But maybe it's good. And there's no limit to that. There's no limit to that. You look at some of the greatest, we'll say, inventions in history, some of the greatest companies in history. All of them, or many of them, were discovered by accident. It's not a trivial idea. You look at something like penicillin, right? Penicillin was obviously it's medicine that we use today, and I don't know if we still use it today, but it was one of the greatest inventions in medicine. And what happens is some guy had a petri dish, and on accident some mold got into his petri dish, and he realized that he created a drug. He was studying something completely different, and he realized he created a drug when some accident happened. And it's like, well, maybe you should go act out in the world then. And then also, right, introducing the next idea, it's a very simple idea. It's like, well, this is what Luke has to struggle with, right? This is exactly what Luke has to struggle with. And right now I'm going to explain to you the most profound idea in, well, cinema history, right? Maybe one of the most profound scenes in cinema history. It is this idea, it is this scene where Luke looks into the binary sunset and just, you just know that this man is full of potential. You just know that he is able to conquer the world, but he's being held back, and he knows it. And he knows that the person that he could be is so much greater than the person that he is. And and you have the music in the background. It's a scene of frustration, but it's also a scene of beauty. You have the binary sunset here, and God, it's just so beautiful. So first of all, I'll explain to you the idea of the binary sunset. The binary sunset is something that, well, first of all, it was an accident, just like I was explaining to you before. Actually, it wasn't supposed to be in the scene. It was actually a film accident. But at the same time, George Lucas decided to keep it. And the reason why he decided to keep it was it looked cool, something like that. He didn't really see the meaning behind it. And then it turns into one of the greatest scenes in cinema history. And the reason why is very simple. At all times, there is a sun setting and there is a sun rising in your life. Always. Always. And you have no idea what's happening, but no matter what, there's always going to be change. There's always going to be flux. And, well, we could say that whenever you undergo a transformation, whenever you create a new idea, whenever you embody a new personality, a part of you is dying and another part of you is rising up. And this flux is always happening in the world. And, well, when Luke goes out to look at the sunset, what's really happening is the part of him that conforms, the part of him that agrees with the culture, the part of him that, well, fits in is dying and a hero is emerging. It's a beautiful scene. It's so, so beautiful, and it's so relatable, right? It's so relatable. So it's a really funny idea. You have, so George Lucas, he said this in the actual, when did he say it? He said it in a press conference. He said, quote, describing Luke, his shaggy hair and baggy tunic give him the air of simple but lovable lad with a prize-winning smile. And it's like, that's about right? You look at him and you say, this is someone that I am. I sympathize with this character because I know that, well, the person that I am is not the person that I could be. And it's really funny. You look at a movie like Aladdin, and it's the same idea. I'll read the same quote again. You have Aladdin who's saying, there's so much more to me, looking out into the sunset. It's the same exact scene. And I'll give you the quote again. His shaggy hair and his baggy tunic gave him an air of simple but lovable lad with a prize-winning smile. That's exactly what Aladdin is. And that's also in the feminine representation. If you watch the movie Beauty and the Beast, that's Belle. Belle is that. She says, there must be more than this provincial life, this life of simplicity and, well, conformity. I don't want to live here anymore, and there's so much more that I can be. So we got that, right? We got that. There's something universal about this idea. The idea that, well, I could be more than I am. Because, well, here's the idea, right? Look at you, right? Look at you and think about you, right? And say, am I doing every single thing that I can do to make my world a better place, make my life a better place, make my family better, make, well, the people around me better, my friends, all these things? Do I waste time? Do I do things that I know that I shouldn't be doing? And the universal answer to this is yes. And this is why it's such a well, profound idea. This is why it's such a universal scene. Then you must ask the next question. Okay, we've figured out that you're inadequate, right? And we figured out that, well, you're not the person that you could be. But the question is, who are you? Are you the person that you are, your inadequate self? Or are you the person that you could be? And that's a difficult question because, well, someone like a scientist, right? Someone like a behaviorist would say, well, you're the person that you are, right? If you act out something, let's say you act out something like conformity, something like, well, being influenced by your authorities, then by definition, your identity, your personality is you are a conformist. You are a person who has no individuality, and, well, you just, according to your behavior, according to the way that you're acting right now, you are just a conformist. There's nothing more to you. But the problem is that's an incomplete view. It's just a completely incomplete view because, well, you ask the question, is there more to you, right? Is there more to you? And, well, could there be more to you? Could you be the person who, well, stops getting distracted so much and starts, adding a little responsibilities and starts taking care of your family and starts, well, taking care of yourself more and, brushing your teeth a little bit more often and taking a little bit more showers and well, developing some more friendships and doing the things that, well, good people do? And the answer is clearly yes. So you're not just defined by the person that you are, you're also defined by the person that you could be. And, well, if you ask the question, which one are you? The answer is something like, you're both and you're neither at the same time. Because we say Luke could someday be a hero. He could someday be the person who rescues his father and restores the balance to the Force. But he doesn't have to be, right? That's not someone who he has to be. And, well, likely that might not be someone who he will be. So we could say maybe he's not that person. But, well, maybe he is that person. Maybe he can be that person. And God, you see this all the time, right? You see this all the time. It's the basic rags to riches story. It's the person who, is poor, who's, well, I'll give you Tony Robbins, for example. Tony Robbins, beat by his mother, poor. His mother was doing drugs and was addicted, and his father walked out on him, and he must grapple with that question of, am I the poor boy, or am I the poor boy who could be something? It's a beautiful idea. And, well, You could bring this down to your daily actions. It's like you just spent 2 hours scrolling through Instagram, doing something that you probably shouldn't be doing, but at the same time, it really doesn't, it doesn't get to you anymore because, well, you do it all the time, and that's what we do. That's what we do. The average person spends, I think, 2.5 hours a day on social media, teenager, and it's like, well, is that you, right? Can you be more than that? Well, of course you can. Of course you can. It's just, well, it's a matter of whether or not you will be, whether or not you'll take action. So I wanted to, a good way of looking at this, I actually found it in Moana, in the movie Moana, and I did a lecture on this, but I didn't really actually go that deep into it in Moana, so I'll explain it. This is the grandma, essentially Obi-Wan. She's essentially the Obi-Wan character, and she speaks to Moana, and she says, mind what he, right, her father, mind what he says, but remember, you may hear a voice inside, and if that voice starts to whisper, to follow the farthest star, Moana, that voice inside, is who you are. And what she's really saying is when you look at that binary sunset, when you wish upon a star, because that's really what Anakin's doing in the most Disney way possible, right? He's looking at a sun. The sun is a star. He's wishing upon a star. When you wish upon a star, you ask yourself, is that me? And it's like, well, it can be, but you're going to have to work for it. Moving on. So we go to the next idea, and, well, he meets Ben Kenobi. He meets, well, the wise old man. He meets the person who is the opposite of Luke's uncle, Ben Kenobi. And, well, what he says is, I think you're worth something, right? That's really what he says. He says, well, you're kind of crappy, and I've been looking after you, and there are some problems with you. Of course there are some problems with you. But you're worth it, right? You're worth it, and you could actually do something to kind of make a little bit of a change. And he shows him the ways of the Force, right? And he does exactly what Qui-Gon did to Anakin in the first movie. He says, hey, listen, this is the Force. This is your potential. This is your future. And you can do this. I'm showing you the way because, well, no one's ever shown him the way before, right? And a funny little side note is what happens is Luke turns off C-3PO, or C-3PO turns off himself, and, well, it's a very simple idea. C-3PO is the idea of the intellect. He's like the strictly rational person, and, well, if you really want to be a hero, if you really want to, well, follow your wish upon a star, really want to develop yourself as an individual, it requires a leap of faith, and it requires maybe a little suspension of reality, a suspension of, we'll say, rationality. And that's exactly what Joseph Campbell said when he talked about crossing the first threshold, descending into the unconscious. And this exactly is the moment where that happens. And all of a sudden you have this dream image show up, right? You have this dream image of the beautiful girl being projected in front of you saying, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. It's a call to adventure. It's a call to, well, take a leap of faith, to well, do anything but look at the ground, to look up and see that there is something more. So that's what Obi-Wan says. He says, you must learn the ways of the Force if you're coming with me to Alderaan, which is exactly where Leia wants them to go. And of course, what do you think Luke is going to do given that information? He says, I can't get involved. I've got work to do. It's not that I like the Empire. I hate it, but there's just nothing I can do about it right now. And remember, that's exactly what his uncle said before, right? His uncle said, we'll just keep you on for the next summer. We'll just keep you on for the next summer. And he keeps saying, okay, we'll just keep you on for the next summer. And then you could go pursue your dreams. Then you could follow your passions. Then you could do what you actually want to do. And, well, Luke has internalized that. Luke has internalized the idea of fitting in, the idea of, well, not being anything special. And, well, he's unable to see past the horizon. He's still looking at the ground. it's as if Obi-Wan took his face and showed him the air, showed him the light, and he just said, "Oh, that's too scary." Looks back down, and well, there are a lot of great representations of this. Actually, I'll give you the story. I'll give you the story of my friend who's actually, well, he's able to do very well for himself now, which is something that's really incredible. He spent his whole life wanting to go into investment banking. His whole life, it was the set path for him. And investment banking is well, the thing that's going to make you the most money. That is Wall Street. That is the people who are making so much money in the world, all the money in the world. But at the same time, it's like, well, you ask the question, what good are you doing for society on Wall Street? It's like, not much. I'm surrounded by, I go to college over here in Indiana University, and well, I am surrounded by investment bankers, and I've heard one person who said, I want to go into investment banking because I actually like it, right? It's the idea of something like selling your soul, or something like, well, conforming to the cultural norms. And, well, he wanted to do that for his whole life. And it required, well, geez, he got rejected from 14 different colleges. You know, pick them. Ivy Leagues, UPenn, Harvard, all of them. He got rejected from all of them. 14 straight. And he settled at a lower college, a college that isn't Harvard, and, well, made a name for himself. Made a name for himself down there. Decided, wait a second, why am I going into investment banking anyways? It's like, the only reason I wanted to go to do that was to satisfy my parents, and I thought I'd be really good at it. But, well, maybe I could look past the horizon. Maybe I could wake up. And, well, about 2 years later, he has a published book, and he's working for one of the, well, greatest companies to ever, do I say walk the face of the earth? Something like that. It's a venture capitalist firm. They're the people who invest in businesses, who invest in the future, who invest in new technologies, you know, things like prosthetic arms and well, things that make people's lives better. It's like, it took him 2 years. He's 20 years old, and he went from individual to working at, well, to changing the world. And it's a beautiful idea. But the thing is, what you have to do is, well, you have to do what Luke isn't doing right here. And, well, you have to see past the horizon. You have to see past the narrow view in which your culture has engraved in you. And that's exactly what Obi-Wan says. He says, that's your uncle talking. So Luke says on the top, it's all such a long way from here. And Obi-Wan says, that's your uncle talking. And he's exactly right. He's exactly right. So Luke denies it. He says, all right, I'm really not going to go do that, and I'm going home. So he goes home, and here's the thing that, well, they strung it together, but archetypically, it's such a beautiful idea. He comes back home, and his home is burnt to a crisp. His home is destroyed. Now let me phrase it in another way. The security in which he was, we'll say, relying on was gone. Why? Why was the home in which he has been given, the home in which he is raised, in the home that has enslaved him, you could say, why has it burnt down? It's because he's seen the light. It's because he knows that there is something that exists beyond the horizon now. He knows that he has another potential path. And, well, he can't go back now. You can't go back now. It's like one of those things. It was actually in the movie Inception. I thought it was really nice. The main character shows, we'll say, the recruit a whole new world. He shows her something like insane, and it's like a different dream reality. The entire concept of Inception is that you go into dreams, and she leaves and she runs away, and she says, I don't want to deal with whatever you're doing. And and someone asked him, they're like, are you going to chase after her? Are you going to, well, try to convince her that she should come on board? And he says, no. Once they've seen the world of dreams, they can't come back. They can't go back to their ordinary reality. They can't go back to the world that, well, that they were once in, because they realize that the life that they're living is so inadequate, so shallow, and, Well, you ask the question, why do we ever do things, right? Why do we ever do things? It's a good question. It's like, actually, a better question is, why don't we ever do things? Why don't we, well, let's say, decide to lose weight, right? Because if you decide to lose weight, if you decide, well, I'm getting a little tubby and I should probably go and go to the gym and eat healthier. And well, what do you have to do before you start to eat healthier and actualize a plan? The first thing you have to do is realize that you're getting a little bit tubby, right? The first thing you have to do is realizing that you're gaining weight. You have to realize that you're inadequate. And well, that's a problem, right? That's a real problem. And this is exactly what Luke is doing here. He's saying, well, I've seen, let's say, something that is better than myself. I've seen the ideal, and now I realize that the world in which I am living is inadequate. It's not the world in which I want to be. And, well, in Pinocchio, you have the same idea. He goes back to his father's home, and his father's gone. It's like, well, you're not a kid anymore. You're not a child. You're not naive anymore. You're not the person that could just be an astronaut, let's say, in the traditional sense. It's like, no, you have to actually go and be an astronaut. It's like you have to actually go and do it. You can't just hold on to the plan. And well, that's beautiful, right? That's a beautiful idea. So the question is now, right, and this is the perfect difference between Anakin and Luke. You ask, so what does he do? What does he do? And he says, I want to come with you to Alderaan. There's nothing for me here now. And then eventually he says, I'm ready for anything. And this is where Anakin failed. So you imagine something like change needs to happen, right? This was something that was predicted by the binary sunset. This was something that was predicted by the setting sun. And the old you must die. The childish you must die. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? You look at someone like Anakin. Anakin said, I am not going to let this happen. His mother died, and he said, I'm going to hold on to this, we'll say, childhood, because this naivety, because I don't want to embrace the world. I don't want to embrace the sufferings of the world. It's too much. It's too much to, well, in his case, realize his inadequacies, because throughout the entire film, throughout the entire 3 movies, he never calls himself inadequate. He never does. And at least you could understand him. Right, at least you could understand him. Coming to the realization that you're, well, not the person that you want to be is not an easy idea, especially, well, that's the idea of a midlife crisis. It's like, what's a midlife crisis? You realize that you're 35 and you never did the things that you really ever wanted to do. You were potential, right? You could have been an astronaut. You could have been an MLB player. And if we're gonna make it a little bit more realistic, you could have been, well, a doctor if you wanted to be a doctor. You could have been, whatever, right? Something that you're really interested in. And you realize that you're just an accountant. You realize that you're just an investment banker. You realize that you pursued something because it was convenient. You pursued something because it was comforting and secure. And, well, you never accepted change. You never got out of the cultural grip that you've been placed on. And what Luke does here is he does one of the most important things, is he accepts change and he's ready to open up his conceptual structures. He's ready to open himself up to the world, a whole new world, if we're going to use the Aladdin reference. And this is, when we say this is where Anakin failed, this is also where I believe most college students fail, right? Because in college, what you're really trying to do is discover your individual self, and you imagine that it's nice being a child. It's nice being a child. You're dependent on people. You're essentially unconscious. You don't really have to think for yourself, and, well, responsibility's hard. Like, responsibility's really hard, and why would you want to be an adult anyways? Honestly, it's like you can make a good case for that. It's really freaking difficult, and well, that's why parents always say, they're like, well, enjoy your childhood while it lasts. And you look at a college kid, something like playing video games and getting drunk. It's like, well, that's somebody who's not ready to accept the responsibilities of the world. That's someone who's not ready to let go of their childhood. They'd rather be, well, they translate, let's say, unconscious conformity to their parents' beliefs and unconscious, well, subservientness to their beliefs to unconscious under the influence of, we'll say, alcohol or whatever drug of your preference, or whatever device, whatever distraction of your preference. And that's not everybody, but it's definitely a lot of people. So this is the fundamental moment, realizing that you are, well, you could be more, and realizing that you're going to take action to go and do that. You're going to change your conceptual structures. You're going to change your action patterns to be something more like an individual, more like the thing that actually, well, the thing that you could be. So let's see how much more time we have. All right, that is good for now. Next, we are going to meet, well, Han Solo. We're going to meet Princess Leia, and we are going to figure out how Luke develops himself, how he actually becomes a, well, individual, how he takes the, we'll say, loving for change, or at least the acceptance of change, and turns it into something like, well, reality, something like actualizing it in the world and taking action to, well, to stop becoming potential, stop becoming his inadequate self, and becoming adequate, or at least becoming a little bit more adequate. So my lesson for you as we lead this lecture is, well, realize that you're inadequate, because we all are, and get with the program and, well, take some action to, well, fix those inadequacies, and then you won't be inadequate anymore. It's a great idea. So that is it for today, and we are moving on to lecture 2.